Whenever you're ready.
Okay. So there are 10 of us, 10 students in the Flyshaker Green First Amendment reporting class this semester. We've been studying historical and modern protest movements in America. And for our field trip, we went for over the weekend to Kent State, Ohio, and we went to Kent State University, went to Kent, Ohio, and went to Kent State University and got to tour the campus and see where the shooting happened when the National Guard shot and killed 4 students at Kent State University 1970 during a Vietnam War protest. They were protesting the invasion of Cambodia at the time, and that was really cool to see where all that happened. Interesting, I guess, not really cool, but then on Saturday we also went to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and because they have an exhibit on protest music, so that was fun. We got to do that in Cleveland. It was a good trip. We learned a lot. It's cool to be able to study something and learn about it, and when you're actually on site, like where it happened, you get to see,
canceled their classes because they wanted their students to be active
where it happened. So, we saw they have memorials up in the exact locations where each of the 4 students were shot and killed. It just really, I guess, makes you realize, like, it makes it feel real, like this really happened. It's crazy that something like that would happen in 1970, less than 50 years ago, but it did, and got to learn about it. So now that we're back, we're going to start working on projects, putting together all of our coverage that we did during the trip.
Going into it, I knew that it was a protest, a gathering on the University Commons about the invasion of Cambodia under Richard Nixon's presidency, and that the National Guard came in and marched the students up and around Taylor Hall before backing off and then firing. But I did learn plenty of new things from that documentary, like the history of it, the days leading up to it especially. That was stuff I had no idea about.
Is it pretty common for students around here to know about the history and what happened?
I would say in general they know, at least the majority of it, that there was the shooting, but the history specifically, I'd say that's not very common, no. I think it definitely has some impact on it, because I think back to the open carry march that happened somewhat recently, a weekend recently, and there was definitely talks about similarities between the marches that were happening then and the marches that were on that weekend there, and definitely similarities between how things should be handled, and especially from the authority here, they definitely knew how to handle it a bit better regarding situations like that can get unruly in some situations.
So why or why not do you think it's important for students or anyone to know about what happened?
Oh, it's definitely super important, because it's a perfect example of getting your voice heard, which is increasingly difficult in some ways, but also getting easier with time. But demonstrations like that, so long as they're peaceful in nature, of course, are a perfect way to get a perspective heard, like those students in 1970. But it's really important to represent your mindset, either your generation's or your personal mindset that way, definitely.
And what do you think about what they mentioned at the end of the discussion about protesting today, like students, or maybe that wasn't during the discussion, but like students today aren't as active in political activism or protests as they were in the 70s, like during the Vietnam War. Do you have an opinion about that?
I definitely agree with what was said. I think there's just a lot of apathy toward government. Like was mentioned, there's a lot of people in the coming generations that are really disappointed with both or any major political party, and that can definitely be a contributing factor of it. I think it's important that students do kind of stay involved in that sort of way, just as it is for every American citizen.
And do you think there are any parallels between Vietnam War protests and protests today, like whether March for Our Lives or Black Lives Matter, just popular protests today?
Well, there's definitely a correlation between, everyone wants their ideas to be heard, whether you agree with them or disagree with them. It's that same idea of expressing your First Amendment, and that's all what it boils down to, and how it's handled correctly or not.